Hi, I'm Matt Johnson, Counsel to the New Hampshire Realtors. This is the next installment in our risk management video series. The topic today is just a reminder about the implications of bankruptcy on a real estate transaction. If you are listing a property for a seller and you have a signed listing agreement and that seller files for bankruptcy protection, your listing agreement is no longer in force because the seller loses the ability to sell their assets without bankruptcy court approval. It does not mean the transaction is necessarily dead. Oftentimes, there are other reasons the seller may file for bankruptcy, and part of bankruptcy is usually disposing of assets. The bankruptcy court may very well approve the transaction that was entered into previously. The only difference is you will need to sign a listing agreement with typically the bankruptcy trustee, and your transaction will be subject to bankruptcy court approval. The other caveat to understand is sometimes in a bankruptcy court transaction, particularly if it's a large or valuable piece of real estate, the bankruptcy may hold actually an auction for the property. So you may have a purchase and sale agreement, but it may be subject to other parties outbidding you. If you end up in that situation, you should consult with your buyer and an attorney, because there are ways for the buyer to protect themselves in bankruptcy and ensure that if they either get the property, or if they don't get the property, they get some of their expenses recovered for having put an offer out there to buy the property. On the buyer side, if you are representing a buyer and that buyer files for bankruptcy, that transaction is for almost all likelihood going to terminate, because the buyer is not going to have the financial ability to complete the transaction while they're in bankruptcy, and once they're in bankruptcy, they will not have control over their finances or ability to complete the transaction. If you face these situations either from the buyer side or the seller side, I encourage you to consult with your principal broker and also to consult with an attorney, as there are ways where the bankruptcy can just be a slight delay to the real estate transaction and it will ultimately close successfully. But there are a few procedural steps that you have to jump through to make sure you do it the right way. Thank you.